All right. So I apologize in advance for my voice. I seem to have picked up something on the plane here. And as Michelle has said, this is a short presentation. So I've got your sympathy, and you're on your way shortly to the, tea time. I am not a journalist. I was trained, went to journalism school, but I very quickly moved to what you call the dark side. I have been a press officer for 16, 17 years. So I have made it a career to help journalists do their job. And that's what I see as my mission at EurekAlert, is to help you do yours. So we'll talk about what EurekAlert is, what our editorial policies are. You may not be aware that we actually have them. Some features and resources that will be helpful for your news gathering needs, how to register, and finally I'll share some results from the surveys. The full survey results will be released at 4 o'clock today. My team back home is timing the tweet to go at 4 o'clock. So if you're already registered, actually, how many of you are already registered with EurekAlert? Very good. How many of you have never heard of EurekAlert until today? That's awesome. All right, so some potential new registrants in store. So we are a nonprofit, editorially independent science news service. I want to stress that we are editorially independent because we are operated by AAAS, which some of you know is the publisher of Science, but we actually work with a large number of journals, and we work with them independently from whatever Science might be doing. We host press releases from about 2,300 contributing institutions from 66 countries. We actually have about 5,000 press officers registered with us, and about 2,300 of those institutions that they represent actually submit content. The eligible institutions include universities, media, medical centers, journals, government agencies, etc. PR agencies are able to register with us, but in order to post a press release, they have to represent an eligible institution. So, for example, a PR agency representing a university on a particular project can submit a press release. And finally, registration is completely free for reporters, but you have to be eligible. So here are some numbers of our impact. We currently have about 13,000 reporters and freelancers from 92 countries registered with us. There's an archive of about 330,000 press releases going back 20 years. And we get approximately 100 to 200 new news release submissions a day. So our editorial policies are built upon scientific and journalistic integrity, and they sort of they're formed around these three pillars. So we credential all registrants, including reporters, freelancers, and public information officers. So we call it PIOs. All the news releases are actually reviewed by a person. So some of the commercial services, you basically upload a document and you pay a fee, and it's made available to reporters. We actually do have a human being look at the press release. We do not vet them for accuracy. It's impossible for us to do that, but we do vet them, especially if it's a research press release, that it is indeed talking about research that's published in a peer-reviewed journal. We have a list of journals we accept, a list of journals, predatory journals specifically, that we don't accept from. And finally, all reporter registrants have to sign an embargo agreement with us. That's how we are able to offer pre-publication manuscript and press packages from journals. So if you're a reporter and freelancer, you are likely to be eligible for a free account if you meet some of these criteria. You must be working on a deadline for accredited news outlets. And when I say deadline, it could be daily, weekly, or monthly. If you only work for a quarterly media outlet, you may not be eligible on that ground, but you may be eligible on other grounds. You need to demonstrate journalistic need for early access. It's not one of those good-to-have things. You have to actually show that you have a need to access this information, and I'll talk about why. If you're a freelancer, you need to show that you have recent or ongoing assignments with an eligible media outlet, and you have to not have any ineligible affiliation. So you cannot concurrently be a scientist or public information officer, a financial analyst, or a lobbyist. And this is in part, not in part, this is completely due to US securities and exchange laws. So insider trading is what we're talking about here. So news releases, and all this information is online, so you can review it in detail. So in order for it to be an eligible news release, it has to be talking about papers or research that's been published in the past 90 days. So we don't consider it new anymore for any kind of freelancer if it's past 90 days. When we talk about science, it's actually quite broad. It's not just the basic science or the applied sciences. It's actually any kind of science that has gone through a recognized scientific process. So oftentimes, reporters think that we only carry sort of hard science, but we actually also carry things like business news. We also carry things that like psychology and humanities, social sciences. So as long as the work has gone through a scientific process, we consider it to be science. And these are the categories that we carry. So research news is by and large our largest category and the most sought after popular category, because all of the press releases in that category is tied to either a peer review article or a scientific presentation at a meeting. And the ones with asterisk can be embargoed. So in terms of forthcoming meetings and stuff like that, a lot of press officers will embargo forthcoming content from scientific meetings, including the AAA's annual meeting. So what is considered research news on EurekAlert? It has to have been published in a peer-reviewed journal or presented at a scientific meeting. Editorials and commentaries based on scientific research and published in a peer-reviewed journal are acceptable. So just because a scientist says something does not make it a scientific commentary in our view. Scientifically validated data or analysis produced by or vetted by a credible and recognized organization. So this may not be peer-reviewed per se, but it's produced by a very well recognized organization. We look at that on a case-by-case basis. And finally, science policy news with recommendations that's based on published research. So we place a lot of emphasis on research that has undergone recognized scientific process. And that, I think, is one of the reasons why a lot of science reporters use us, because they know that there is a sort of a basic requirement to be on EurekAlert. So in order to gain embargoed access, you have to sign an embargo agreement, and this is on an individual basis, so not on a newsroom basis. So as a freelancer, you take this embargo with you wherever you go. When you apply, you list the publications that you work with. When you change that, you update that with us so that we know that who you're working with. You have to agree to respect all embargoes posted on EurekAlert, and we do not discourage enterprising journalists. So we'll talk about embargo breaks in a little bit. I'm sure people have questions about that. But when we look at your engagement with us, it's based on your access to a specific piece of content on our website. And that's where the embargo agreement comes in. When you register and give us your email address, and if you ask us a particular piece of content that was embargoed, and that embargo later is lifted early for whatever reason, we issue embargo lift notifications so that you're not holding your stories based on that. And then finally, if you break an embargo and we investigate it, there may be a probation or suspension of access for violation. So, for those of you who have used EurekAlert, this is probably fairly familiar. The first thing you want to do is log in. So as reporters, you get certain resources that the public and press officers do not get, including an embargo news feed. And the embargo time, as where the arrow is always clearly listed in red, and we always list our embargo times in U.S. Eastern Time, where we're based, and in GMT. A lot of British reporters would sometimes confuse GMT in the summertime as BST, and that can cause some issues. But it's always GMT because we work with an international audience, so that's the easiest one for everybody else to use. On the right-hand side of that embargo news page, you'll see a list of journals that currently offer press packages and manuscripts from on our website. This is a current list of journals that work with us. And on the right-hand side here, you can see where the arrow is. So the image shows is a screenshot of Science Press Package, or SciPack. So Science actually works with us exclusively with their embargo content. So if you want Science embargo content, you have to register with EurekAlert. But through that, you can also get some resources like you actually get the whole archive of Science journals. So if you ever want to do research on past articles, you can go through EurekAlert to get that. We issue daily or weekly email alerts based on your customization. So you can customize your email based on keywords, categories, regions, journals, or institutions, and you can do that as many times as you want. They are issued every day at around 2 a.m. U.S. Eastern Time, so you typically will get them around 7 o'clock, 8 o'clock in the morning. And they will collect all the new press releases that have been processed the day before. And we have a large archive of images, videos, and audio files. Most of these are attached to a press release. Some of them are submitted as standalones, so they may be able to be useful to you in your reporting. All of the images and videos have credit information and usage information attached to them, and typically there's also a press officer contact if you ever need help with them. We are truly international. We have press releases in 6 languages: French, German, Spanish, Portuguese, Japanese, and Chinese. We find that especially if you're working in multiple languages, that sometimes these translations will help you speed up your work because some of the special scientific terms have been translated for you. Not all multi-language releases have an English version, but not all English press releases have a multi-language version. And finally, we have a large press release archive, as I mentioned. This may be useful to you if you're looking for experts who can comment on a particular story. Remember, this is 330,000 press releases going back 20 years. So if it was a major scientific breakthrough, there probably is a press release that's somewhere in the EurekAlert archive. Our search engine is quite old, I'll be honest about that, and the more keywords you put in there, the better. As people now kind of expect a Google search experience, you can also search the public site through Google. So if you do what Jonathan talked about, if you do search terms and then cite EurekAlert.org, it'll actually give you returns from our website. A note here that embargo news is not searchable, so all the embargo news is actually on a separate server that you have to log in to get in, and it is not searchable. So if I've made a good sales pitch and you want to join us, click on the register button, complete the online form. I think we've just revamped this so that it's 3 very simple pages. My team will do a sort of quick background check, make sure you are who you say you are and that you don't have any ineligible affiliations. And if you have any specific, so when you sign up, you have access to all the journals that are listed, but 3 journals require secondary approval by the journal administrator. So if you choose those during your registration, they will basically turn on your access. And then set up your EurekAlert Express emails. A temporary login will be sent to you, and you must change your password when you get that. And then if you want to change your email or publication, you have to contact us. You can't do that in your account. This is so that we can verify whatever new publication you might be working for is still eligible to be on EurekAlert. So I think this is what some of you are waiting for. So we surveyed our reporter registrants earlier this year, and as you can see, it's a very small sample size, but it is a very, very specialized audience, and we asked them a lot of questions about how they use EurekAlert and how they gather science news. So not surprising to see those who are registered with EurekAlert do use this quite regularly. 45% use them on a daily basis, and 34% use them several times a week. And they do find stories that they use in their publications. So several times a month, 40% of the reporters publish stories based on ideas that they find from EurekAlert. And a further 30% do it at least once a month. And you can see about 29% do it either daily or several times a week. So these are the reasons why reporters tell us that they use EurekAlert. Story ideas. There's a lot of information on the website, and oftentimes you might see several press releases on the same paper, and they might be issued by different press officers from different regions that may be specific to your needs. Embargo access is a big one. Under useful resources, I can't see my notes here, but I think that includes access to old press releases and papers, manuscripts, and that sort of thing. So this is what reporters find most useful. Again, the embargo news feed is top of the line, and embargo journal pages and EurekAlert Express emails. So this was one of my burning questions, because we talk about embargo a lot, but there was no sort of agreement on how long a reasonable embargo period is. And based on those who responded, we're looking about five days or so is when they consider to be enough time for them to identify the story, read the paper, maybe contact some scientists, and put together their stories. So we asked reporters why they use social media, and the majority of them use it to promote their own content, but they're also using it to see what other outlets are reporting on and to get story ideas. And that's it. As I mentioned, the full survey reports will be online. Those of you who are registered will get an email shortly with the link, and check our Twitter account for the link to the full report, and happy to answer any questions.